What's up, dudes and dudes to the internet? My name's Seth, and I'm very happy to be bringing you Stellar Overload patch notes video today. If you didn't already check it out, I do have a full Let's Play series of this game, and the first version of it, Steam Early Access 1, which now it's actually gone to Early Access 2, and has added tons and tons of new content and features and stuff like that. However, it ended up deleting my file that was in the previous version, so I'm gonna have to try and find some time to grind up to that, and I'm gonna explain a couple things while we're sitting here on the main hub screen, but I'm going to put links in the description to my Let's Play series, and then also another video I ended up having that kind of explains all of the basic game mechanics and everything like that. This is one of my all-time favorite voxel games. Seriously, check it out if you haven't already. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, first and foremost, what I wanted to do before we hop in for the gameplay today is I wanted to show you this. One of the new features that they've added is you can actually load up a world in creative mode, and then you can export that into a custom universe where you yourself can actually design dungeons and stuff like that, and scenarios and everything, and set it all up for you and friends to end up playing around in, which is absolutely awesome, isn't it? There we go. Just had to turn off the cycling daytime. Now, there's gonna be a couple things that I'm just gonna try and skim over as quick as possible, because otherwise there is going to be a link in the description as well to the patch notes. But I want to show you the most exciting thing about Stellar Overload that they ended up adding. Normally there was just the vehicles that you could drive around on the planet, and pretty much you could go to a certain altitude based on like where the ground was and stuff like that. But now we are actually controlling a spaceship, which we legit can actually take and fly out into the skies. This is in the core game right now. You can actually do this not even in a creative world, but actually in a normal world, and we could technically spend our time flying all the way up to that planet up there, which would just take a very long time, of course, but it's a nice way of getting a sneak peek of some of the planets that are going to eventually be added to the game. So the way that the spaceship is going to end up working is very similar to the vehicles, where you're gonna have to plop down this as kind of the main core. This is telling the game that this is going to end up being a ship, as well as the ship's cockpit, which you have to put on it, and then the thrusters. Now, the difference between like the normal vehicle and the spaceship is that the thrusters you're gonna have to put on every axis so that you actually have control over every axis, because otherwise, if we only put a thruster onto the back of this thing, we can only move forward. There's no brakes, there's no strafing side to side. We can roll and pivot and just move forward, and that's it. Now, if you end up putting it on all the other sides of it, of course, you can end up flying around. Now, the thing that's really cool about it, just if you're just tuning in and didn't check out the other videos, is that you can completely customize anything you want around this block. So you can make like a full-on spaceship, and you could even, if you want to, hide these jets so that you don't actually see them coming out of your ship and stuff like that, which is just amazing, isn't it? Now, the other big things that they have added is Steam Workshop support for blueprints. If you're wondering what a blueprint is, pretty much you can actually create pretty much anything in the game that you want, and now you can actually select that and turn it into a custom blueprint. So, map builders, get hyped, because you can actually create your own custom blueprints of a build. Maybe you want to just take a hallway, or maybe like a staircase or the middle of a bridge, and then combine all those aspects together to end up making your own custom maps. And now, especially more than ever, in the creative mode tools, you can end up spawning creatures, hostile mobs, helpful mobs, and passive mobs and stuff like that, so you actually can design your own full-on dungeons. And if you're wondering about some of these extra creatures, there's gonna be like spiders and mantises and stuff like that. Those are going to come into play with the new planet. So what ended up happening at the end of my first Let's Play series, and like I said, I'm gonna have to definitely spend some time regrinding my file up to the end of the first planet, because the way that this works is there's quest objectives and stuff like that. But then you end up teleporting to a forest planet. Unfortunately, we're not gonna get to see that today. Sorry to say, folks. We'll get to see that when I actually get there in the Let's Play series, and then I'll have an episode about that. But otherwise, it is a beautiful forest planet. At the time was just kind of a preview. You would get there and the game would say, hey, you know, this is incomplete. Now it's actually complete. I don't know if there's quest objectives there yet. Maybe it's just that the planet is kind of accessible and actually like designed well. So it's got like, it's just so beautiful. Like seriously, check the screenshots. But the fact that Steam Workshop is here is a very big deal because it means that the devs are also going to be able to take advantage of the community's created content. So they're going to be able to take vehicles and buildings and stuff like that. And maybe some of those will actually make it into the final portion of the game, which how sick would that be, right? They also added secondary quests, which in the main game, once you complete the main quest, you're going to see some of these NPCs inside the military base are going to wave you down, and they're actually going to give you some added side quests that you can keep track of. And then, yeah, okay, so it says right here that they only designed Istara, which is the forest planet. They designed the landscape of it. So it's the final look as far as the planet's generation is going to be, but I guess that means they don't have any quests or anything like that just yet. They also have a new quest log that you can track some of the side quests about and the main quest and everything like that. I think I have to hop out of creative mode for that though, so let me see if I can do that. Okay, now that we've actually warped into the main game here, yeah, if you end up pressing J, you can see the main quest and we would be able to see the side quests if we ended up having those available to us, which we do not. They also revamped the help window, added a workshop window. Which key was that? I think that was P. Yeah, there it is. So you're going to be able to drag and drop all your blueprints in here. And I think that's also going to end up being really, really cool because it means that not only the devs are going to be able to take advantage of this, but players themselves, it's going to be very much like, you know, using the Gmod and stuff like that, where we're going to be able to pull custom vehicles that other people have made and throw them into our world, so long as we end up having the proper resources for them, which is so exciting. Like seriously, the devs that are designing this game are just so modern that I love it. That's why this is one of my favorite voxel games of all time, because they keep doing these little, such tiny little things that they make a very complex system into something very accessible and very simple for the player, right? But anyways, they added a take all button to containers. Blueprint sharing and interface also allows you to share blueprints across the universe with other players and stuff. Change the HUD layout. The action bar shortcuts are now translucent and stuff like that. Added options to set your field of view and mouse sensitivity. Those are actually very big ones, especially the field of view, because now we can actually zoom our camera out even though it's still first person, because otherwise the game was a little bit claustrophobic in some of the dungeons and stuff like that. Added the possibility to bind mouse axis to movement axis and rotation controls and stuff like that for the people that have those crazy mouses with 5 million buttons. The movement key bindings now split for each type of vehicle. So you can actually customize your controls for walking, driving a vehicle, and driving a spaceship, all separated instead of all just being linked into one control scheme. The default key bindings are now adapted to WASD keyboards. Instead, I guess it was like a foreign keyboard in the first place. Shortcuts that are already bound, red notification, are now automatically unbound to prevent two actions from being bound to the same key. Also, let me just scroll down on the patch notes here. Gameplay. So they added a death penalty. Normally in this game, you would end up just choosing, activating a spawn point, and then you would end up respawning at that point, right? Man alive, even with my monstrous computer, I still get frame rate on this game. I might have to turn the graphics down or the dynamic lighting or something. I don't know. It's beautiful though, isn't it? But either way, now when you end up dying, you still keep your gear, like your armor and your weapons and stuff like that, so that you're not completely defenseless, but you're gonna end up dropping like your food and blocks and everything else in your inventory is gonna drop into a bag that you're then going to have to go and retrieve. So that's a nice little penalty that they ended up adding. Added equipment saving. It's a consumable item enabling you to respawn without losing any part of your inventory. So that's some special item that you can construct. Rebalance of the creatures and container loot. Some containers which were always empty will now actually contain items. Story. Added secondary quests given by some of the characters. As I mentioned, you gotta complete the main story so that you can end up getting to that. Environment. Completely redesigned Istara, the new planet. Added new animals. Queen bee, Brock, spider, queen spider, and stuff like that. Oh man, I'm getting excited for that area when that gets fully integrated. The fact that they actually have the planet design means that now they can actually start making the quest objectives around it, right? And don't quote me on this, but I think it would be really, really cool of the devs if they ended up making it so that in creative mode, we could end up setting up our own quest objectives. That would really step this game up to an insane level, wouldn't it? Okay, integrated tree houses from the construction contest. So they ended up having a fan contest where people would end up designing different tree houses, and they've actually implemented those into the forest planet, I guess. So that's pretty darn cool. Centered clouds above the faces of the planets to avoid seeing one on other horizontal or other axis and stuff like that. Because the way that this game works, if you don't already know, is we're on a giant cube world, literally, and you can end up walking off the edge, and then gravity is going to end up changing based on you walking off the edge. Now, there's going to end up being some clouds that will generate, like those guys right there, and what they are trying to say right here as far as the patch is concerned is now they're not just going to be out in the middle of, like, the middle of both axes, you know what I mean? Okay, added blocks and meta blocks for Istara, pine needles, rotten logs, hive, flowers, stuff like that. Added new models for Istara, like a giant tree and braid trees and stuff like that. Most of that is actually affecting creative mode because you can actually choose a lot of, like this tree right here, you can actually choose that in your creative mode inventory and then just click and plop it down, and there you go, you end up having that tree. So they do have a bunch of presets for sure. The bestiary has been updated. Refund of Legionnaire texture and handled animations on their face, reflecting their alert level, attack state, etc. and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. It means that the enemies are going to actually animate a little bit, I guess. I haven't seen any of them just yet, but I'm very excited about it. Building updates. So right click on the recorder. So the recorder is the copy and paste tool. That's the thing that you end up using as the lifeblood when you're actually creating stuff. So what they ended up doing with it now, this is fantastic. You can end up designing a house and just right-clicking it, and all of the blocks that are connected to it are going to automatically get picked up by the recorder and selected. So as I mentioned in the patch notes, make sure that you don't have it attached to the planet, because otherwise it's going to try and copy the entire planet instead of just the house. So make sure that when you end up building prop items that you're going to use out in the world, that they're just hovering above the ground and stuff like that, right? It's getting dark, which is gross. Then they added spaceships, allowing you to fly into space. There are 3 associated control meta blocks to it, which we already covered. The story and natural creative universe are no more compatible. I guess that means that using creative and the story mode aren't actually compatible. Maybe you can't start quests from a creative world. I don't know. The flat creative universe, which is when you create a flat world, are still compatible. However, you need to copy them from an old save game folder to the new one. Ooh, not exactly sure what that means, but maybe that means I could salvage my old file. That would actually be very, very helpful, because otherwise I'm very pressed on time, you know, with holidays coming around, that I really didn't know how I was going to end up grinding out this main quest here. We can now use Swapper on moss or vegetation. The Swapper tool is a tool that allows you to quite literally swap whatever block you click on with whatever it has as its ammunition. So now they actually changed it so that it affects some of the vegetation, I suppose. The snaps to grid key, or snaps to grid mode, V is the default key, is now a global parameter and no longer linked to each shortcut of plan or gauntlet. There is one separate state for building and digging. Okay, that'll make things a little bit easier because, well, just building and digging are going to be separate on the gauntlet, right? Keeping the left mouse button pressed while placing a blueprint allows you to adjust the position based on the relative movement of the player's camera. That is actually very, very handy. So that means as we're placing down a blueprint, if you hold down the left click, you're going to be able to just slightly adjust where it is rather than having to get it right on the first click. You know what I mean? Blueprint shortcut now shows the maximum number of instances of this blueprint that can be put, because of course there's going to be more and more memory is going to be taken out of your file the more blueprints you end up placing down, of course. Provided access to the early access 1 version using a branch of Steam so that you can retrieve your creations from the previous version, and then they explain that in the patch notes and stuff like that. The AI has changed a little bit as well, so they actually have a charging animation for the Legionnaires, so you can actually anticipate them, and they can kind of anticipate their target as well. Centurions now fire bigger projectiles, slower, but are doing a lot more damage to be avoided by the player. Creative mode added a console command to more immediately stop flying mode and the momentum, because otherwise there is momentum in this game, especially when you get the jetpack, and they ended up adding the feature in creative mode where you can turn that momentum off so that you actually just stop on a dime and just can animate your character without going oh and sliding like you're on ice, right? You can now export a creative universe into custom mode, allowing players to play on it like in story mode, like we ended up mentioning earlier. You can now undo digging effects of weapons and grenades. That is actually a very big deal. So there is actually an undo and redo that you can use in creative mode and stuff like that, and they've made it so that weapons and grenades are also affected by these parameters, which is great, because otherwise I was testing it out and you could actually design a house and then you could blow it up and you couldn't undo that effect. But now that you can, that's fantastic, especially because if you end up keeping like another save and stuff like that, I could totally see in the future where somebody could actually design like a modern village or something like that, and then just have a bunch of your friends just all blow it up while fighting each other, right? And then you could just reload the file to end up reloading the world, or in this case, just hit undo until it's all ended up being put away, right? Added the possibility to put down creatures. Optimization, reduced frame rate drops when moving. However, we are still dealing with frame rate drops in general, but that also could be because I'm doing stuff in the background, or maybe this game is not taking full advantage of my video cards. Multiple optimizations aiming to improve frame rate, reduced network bandwidth usage in multiplayer. Audio, migrated all game sounds into a different type of audio engine, which is better at mixing for 5.1 support. Activated audio occlusion, you no longer hear sounds through walls. Deactivated music in creative mode. Maybe people were having problems with it, I don't know. And then there's a huge list of bug fixes. I don't know if this actually goes to 18 pages, does it? Oh my, it actually does. Yeah, there's a lot more to this There's a lot more to this patch than I thought. There's even more user interface and more bug fixes and stuff like that. So that is pretty much the big bulk of the content. I'm going to leave the rest up to you. Links will be in the description for all that, everybody, because otherwise this video would end up being way too long. But I'm going to see if I can end up recovering my save. That would be really cool. And see if I can see the new planet and get that for you all on camera right now. No, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it ended up keeping my early access 1 file. Maybe it doesn't actually keep the file, and instead they're just specifically keeping the blueprints and stuff like that, which is weird because I actually just recently played on my file in early access 1, and now it just doesn't seem to be there. Maybe it secretly is in a different folder on my computer or something and not in the Steam folder, but I checked my docs and everything like that and my games, and honestly, I don't know. It just means that I'm pretty much going to have to grind up my file, which is a little bit disappointing because it means that it's going to take a while before we end up getting to see that new planet and everything. But either way, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Very much appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, favorite, and subscribe for more daily content. Shine on and stay epic, everybody.